In a move that threatens to widen the global trade war, Trump announces new import taxes of 25% on foreign cars and car parts coming into the US. Italian cheese may be the next victim of looming trade tariffs, potentially turning it into a luxury for US consumers. Meanwhile, Chinese automaker BYD overtakes Tesla in revenue and launches new self-driving features. Hello, I'm Taiba Aydin with the latest business and finance news here on TRT World. Shares of Asian automakers fell on Thursday after US President Donald Trump announced new tariffs on car imports into the country. Japanese automakers Toyota and Honda fell as much as 3.69% and 2.9% respectively. Nissan, which has two plants in Mexico, declined by 2.9%, and Mazda Motor Corporation lost more than 6%, while Mitsubishi Motor fell by as much as 4.9%. South Korea's Kia Motors, which also has a manufacturing plant in Mexico, dipped 2.7%, while shares of Chinese automakers NIO and Xpeng fell 3.9% and 1.9% respectively. The White House announced a 25% tariff on imported cars and light trucks starting as soon as April 2nd. Trump has long said that tariffs on auto imports would be a defining policy of his presidency. The announcement also pushed US stocks lower, led by a decline in tech stocks. Major tech names such as Meta and Amazon dropped more than 2%, while Alphabet lost more than 3% and Tesla slid over 5%.
Yeah, we're going to have very strong policing, and it's pretty easy to do. If parts are made in America and a car isn't, those parts are not going to be taxed or tariffed. And we'll have very strong policing as far as that's concerned. For the most part, I think it's going to lead cars to be made in one location.
There are difficult debates between Europe and America over trade and tariffs. And there are calls to revive ideas of European autonomy. Let me be absolutely clear. This is not the time to go it alone. Not for Europe or North America. The global security challenges are too great for any of us to face on our own.
We're now joined by Nadia El-Belassi in Dubai. She's a senior market analyst at Equity Group. Hi there, Nadia. Now, how are investors digesting the news of these latest tariffs so far, which come on top of the reciprocal tariffs that Trump is due to announce by his self-imposed deadline next week?
Good morning, Taiwa. I think investors are waiting for a response from Mexico, Canada, and China. We're still waiting to see if there's going to be a deal made to set off the TikTok deal, so we can see that there's not going to be tariffs made, other tariffs made on China. So there's the whole TikTok deal thing for China. So investors are still waiting on that, especially for Beijing. But I think that all car manufacturers, they have dropped in early morning trades, and we are seeing that safe haven demand is still going very strong on behalf of the trade war. There's also going to be a set of responses. I think that there has been a lot of comments from European Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen that said that this is going to be bad for consumers and bad for the country as well, bad for Europe in general. They're waiting to see the counter tariffs or the response, the counter response that they're going to offer, and as well as for other countries like Canada. I think there's going to be a major response from Canada as well. This is going to because this is not just for cars, this is for also car components, and this will definitely have its a big effect on the car industry. So and this is all to promote the trade deficit situation. So he wants to Trump basically wants to hit the countries that are the reason for the trade deficit in his own country. So we go back to this point that he wants to save the American consumers and work behind his workforce.
Right, and as you mentioned, this will also include car parts. Surely this will also hurt US car makers. So how severe could the impact be?
So, like he's mentioned, that anything that takes place in the U.S. or for the U.S. companies, he's going to find a solution for that. That's why he said policing these kind of companies. But definitely, it's going to backfire on also all the car companies that have or that are working on or taking car components from elsewhere or from abroad or specifically Canada or Mexico. There's a lot of U.S. car manufacturers that are taking car components from elsewhere. So this is also going to drive production slower, and it's going to affect demand.
Right, Nadia Al-Bilassi, we will have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your input.
Thank you, Taiba.
Now we'll look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. The UK government has revised its 2025 growth forecast, slashing it to just 1% from the previous estimate of 2%. Citing ongoing economic challenges, the adjustment comes alongside billions of dollars in spending cuts to improve the public finances. But the country's growth outlook for the next 3 years has been upgraded by the Office for Budget Responsibility. Hong Kong's housing prices continued their decline for the third consecutive month in February, hitting a near 9-year low amid a sluggish economy. Private home prices saw a 0.9% drop in February, following a 0.7% decrease the previous month. Rentals, on the other hand, rose by 0.3%, marking the highest level in the past 5 months. France's Schneider Electric plans to invest over $700 million in the US by 2027. The funds will go towards AI growth and energy upgrades and create 1,000 new jobs. The energy management company's total investment in the US will exceed $1 billion over 10 years. And UNICEF says global funding cuts could leave 14 million children without vital nutrition services this year. The agency warns that this puts millions at risk of severe malnutrition and even death. Nearly 2.5 million may lose access to food, while thousands of healthcare centres face closures. Still ahead on the programme, Italian cheese faces a bitter twist. With new trade tariffs looming, exports to the US could slow and prices might soar. What will it mean for the rest of us? We'll find out after this short break. Chinese carmaker BYD has recently rolled out autonomous driving capabilities, closely mirroring what Tesla offers in its vehicles. But that's not all. BYD has also surpassed Tesla in revenue. The EV maker has firmly planted itself at the top, outpacing Tesla for a full year. BYD's revenue reached $107 billion in 2024, not only crossing the $100 billion threshold, but also overtaking Tesla's $97.7 billion. Tesla still edged out BYD in pure EV sales with 1.79 million vehicles sold compared to BYD's 1.76 million. But BYD's success stretches far beyond electric cars alone. When hybrid models are included, BYD's total sales reached a record-breaking 4.3 million in 2024. Tesla, which focuses exclusively on fully electric vehicles, couldn't match this feat. BYD stock has soared by roughly 50% this year, a reflection of the company's strong performance and the ongoing rally in China's tech sector. In contrast, Tesla's shares have taken a hit, dropping 26.6% this year. The reasons behind the decline are multifaceted: a lack of fresh products, controversy surrounding CEO Elon Musk's politics, and growing concerns about US tariffs. Now, looking ahead, BYD continues to gain momentum. In the first 2 months of 2025, the company's sales rose year-on-year, while Tesla's sales saw a decline over the same period. Joining us now is Mario Arturo Ruiz Estrada, a professor of international economics at the University of Kuala Lumpur. Good to have you back on TRT World, Professor. Now, BYD has overtaken Tesla on total revenue. Just tell us a bit about how it's achieved this.
Okay, we need to remember that BYD cars, they're improving a lot technologically. And the problem with Tesla, I think, is like high protection. And this is the problem with Tesla, that they don't have competition before. Now China come out with new cars, new technologies, and more advanced than before. We need to accept that the productivity of China, what always I repeat, is very high compared with the American productivity. And we see that China's growing technologically more fast than the United States. The problem is that they're thinking with tariff is going to be the instrument to stop the Chinese products coming in the United States. But you need to remember why Tesla is dropping. It's because the European market is closing. After the tariff was imposed by United States, and also Canada and Mexico are large markets of Tesla, they have no interest to buying anymore. And BYD is taking over the Canadian market and Mexican market that before is a strategic market for Tesla. In United States, the market is only 20%, but in Mexico, in Canada, in Europe, the large sales is reducing dramatically after that United States imposed a tariff to products from Europe, United States, from Mexico, and Canada. What something is, I believe that like any company, I feel like Tesla is declining. I think the CEO, Elon Musk, is dropping his vision in the company, the Tesla and cars, and he focused more on politics. I think that you cannot forget that he is busy involved in the government issues, and the company, I think the CEO or his teams, they are not focusing in the right way. And my perception is that Tesla is going to collapse in 2-3 years if Europe, Mexico, and Canada close the markets originated by the tariff imposed by the Trump administration. This is very critical for Tesla. And only Tesla, half another companies has also suffered the impact. What the Americans cannot see is that the tariff is not affecting only the local domestic consumer. They are affecting the companies' exports because also they have tariff in the opposite side. What I feel is that the Chinese cars, they are more cheap and more competitive and more efficient compared with the Tesla and American cars. This is my perception. But the United States need to improve more to compete and be next to China's cars companies. I think that Europe now, with this trade war exists between Europe and the United States, I think China cars is coming very fast to invade the European market more than Tesla. And remember that Canada and Mexico, they are very large market that also China's taking quietly. And also in Asia, we can see, especially in the case of Malaysia, we have the BYD cars, they are coming aggressively and it's taking the market from Tesla. Tesla market in Southeast Asia is not so large, but we can see that Chinese cars are invading the Southeast Asian market dramatically. Now, why? Because the price is competitive, they bring new technologies, and also the battery of the cars, they are more longer, more fast charging than Tesla. I think that part of the international trade is that the tariff imposed by the United States is killing Tesla quietly and not have positive effect. It's generating negative effect for Tesla more than benefits because they closing external markets, large markets, and China is taking advantage of this one. That's all. Yeah. This is my perception about Tesla. And BYD is going to be more aggressive in the next years because the demand is increasing, not only in developed markets, also in developing countries like Latin America, Middle Asia, and the Middle East. It's growing.
Right, Professor, we will have to leave it there. Mario Arturo Ruiz Estrada, thank you very much for your time. Now, tariffs and trade wars have long weighed on a wide range of industries, and Italian cheese may be the next casualty. With a new round of trade restrictions looming, Italian producers and exporters are bracing for another painful blow, one that could make cheese a luxury for American consumers. Omar Baccalola has the story.
Whether it's a plate of creamy fettuccine, a classic margherita pizza, or a fresh caprese salad, Americans love Italian food, but That law could soon be tested. A looming trade battle is set to make a crucial ingredient, Italian cheese, much harder to afford. After months of threats, US President Donald Trump is set to announce widespread reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd, targeting countries he believes impose unfair trade barriers on US goods.
We at Italian Farmers Confederation believe that tariffs are counterproductive for both those who implement it and those who it affects. Because on the side of those who implement, there would be an increase in prices for the families who are buying the products. There would be higher costs to buy dairy products.
Italian farmers are now fearing that history might repeat itself. The country's cheese industry was hit hard during Trump's first term, which saw a devastating 25% tariff imposed on European goods as punishment for EU subsidies to aerospace giant Airbus. Producers say the impact of tariffs would ripple across the sector, affecting thousands of businesses and farmers. They also fear higher prices might push American consumers toward cheaper, domestically made substitutes.
51% of the pecorino cheese produced in Italy is exported to the US. There are 8,500 businesses making pecorino, 8,000 in Sardinia and 500 in our region. We have an economic turnover of $172 million as far pecorino's export to the US is concerned. Our concern is that if the tariffs will be at 25%, exports could suffer a decrease, which we have estimated at up to $45 million.
But some producers believe the impact on Italian cheese may not be as severe as feared.
We don't have big fears at the moment. Firstly, because it's a product that's sold a class, let's say, fairly high, we should have no problem paying more for it. On the other hand, there is a fact that Pecorino Romana about a year ago, because of a shortage of milk, has seen wholesale prices rise more than 20% higher than today. Right now, in my opinion, even if they were to put tariffs at 20-25%, we wouldn't have the price of a year ago.
Some Italians are also looking to Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who has built close ties with Trump ally Elon Musk. There is hope that diplomatic maneuvering could help soften the blow for Italy's iconic food industry. Ömer Bakkaloğlu, TRT World.
For more on this, European Affairs analyst Klaus Jürgens joins us live from Innsbruck in Austria. Now, Klaus, the US is the largest market for European farmers and agri-food producers outside of the EU. Tell us more about how these tariffs will impact them.
Yes, very good morning to you. Of course, the proposed tariffs will impact European farmers to a very large extent. Now, let me mention one thing to put this into the wider picture. In 2023, on average, in the US, there were 4% of tariffs on agricultural goods, 2.1% on non-agricultural. Canada had 14%. And even in his first administration, Donald Trump came up with plans to change the system. He was complaining and is complaining that European farmers are dumping its produce onto and into the US market. So we see a very strong protectionist approach from the side of the US administration. Now, European farmers, of course, are in shock. It is very, very difficult to keep the current levels of exports into the United States should the proposed tariffs go ahead. And you can't just change the way you produce overnight. You make your plans a long time in advance. European farmers are rightly upset, and I think they will demand from the European Union, from Brussels, that this time the EU speaks with one voice and goes to Washington and says, look, this is not possible, because let us not forget, the EU might do exactly the same mistake and add retaliatory tariffs. Think about corn, soybeans, dairy, beef. There are many different projects actually reaching the European Union. So farmers are upset, rightly so. It becomes very, very difficult to sustain their own income levels.
Right, and could this lead to oversupply issues in Europe if exports to the US decline because of tariffs? And what would it mean for both producers and consumers alike?
Yes, Think about the producers. Yes, you have made your plan. You start to prepare your seeds and everything. Same like compare it to your own garden. You plan well ahead of the new season, and then you reap the rewards. So definitely 1 year, 1 season would ultimately be lost. There would be an oversupply. You can't just send it to somewhere else for free, although that perhaps might be the only solution as a kind of humanitarian aid. There will be oversupplies initially, yes. Now, having this as a point, the oversupplies cannot go on year after year after year. Should the tariffs really come into force, European farmers and the European Union must come up with a plan B. Can we sustain current production levels, or should we perhaps reduce? How can we reduce to still keep farmers alive and in business? Can we source new markets, perhaps? Can we source alternative markets? Many, many things at stake. My worry is the farmers this time cannot do it alone. They need support from European governments.
Right, Klaus Jürgens from Innsbruck in Austria, thank you very much for your input.
Thank you very much.
Protesters have erupted in Chile over a new fishing law that redistributes quotas among fishermen. Protesters believe the new law favours industrial companies by cutting allocations for small-scale fishers. Emre Boz has more.
Not even barricades can stop these protesters.
Our country is surrounded by sea. We are mere sea, but people barely eat fish. Why? Because the fishing industry uses it to produce fish meal to feed salmon farms, which pollute our sea.
They're outraged over the Senate passing a bill on fishing quotas distribution. The law alters the catch limits for both industrial and artisan fisheries.
Quotas have been set at 70% for artisan fishermen and 30% for industrial ones. However, they were changed by the Senate Fishing Commission. This is what angered us because they didn't respect the discussion that lasted for over a year. Then 5 senators said no and they cut our quotas in a totally anti-democratic way. This new law will remain for 30 years. This is what brought different groups and fishermen from the Chilean coast here.
Fisheries play a vital role in the Chilean economy. The country boasts the 8th largest fishing industry in the world, generating $9 billion in seafood exports by November last year. And artisanal fisheries support over 90,000 jobs, contributing to coastal livelihoods and trade. Any decline in the sector could further slow Chile's already sluggish growth. GDP has stayed below 2% last year, dipping into negative territory in the second quarter. And by the fourth quarter, it slowed to 0.4%. This is due to weak consumption and disruptions in key exports like copper. And with cuts to fishing quotas, it looks like more of the same this year. Emre Boz, TRT World.
Well, that's all your business news for now. Thanks for watching. The Newsmakers is next.